Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan, and we're going to do it right away, as this podcast, as always, is presented by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. We're going to prematurely wish everybody a happy new NFL league year. Now, technically, as Adam knows, the new league year does not start until Wednesday. But since our next podcast after this will come out Thursday, Adam, I figured, and since the madness will technically start around 3 o'clock to Monday today for most people.
12 o'clock. 12 o'clock.
I'm sorry, 12 o'clock, right? 12 o'clock with the opening of the legal tampering period. We'll just lay it out now. We'll just wish everybody a happy new league year prematurely. Does that sound good?
Yep. And by the way, when we get to 4 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, when it technically opens, just about every big free agent will be off the board. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because I remember when they started this open negotiating period, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, maybe even 10. But when they did it, it was because they knew there was rampant tampering going on.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to give the ability for agents. Players could not, by the way, other than Michael Oweno, the right tackle / guard for the Patriots, he's a player, doesn't have an agent. He can negotiate it on his own. Players cannot talk to other teams until 4 p.m. on Wednesday, but the agents can starting Monday for players that they represent from other teams.
Right.
And that's 12 p.m. Eastern. But because you see it reported, well, they're going to be talking to this player on Monday. Well, no, they'll be talking to the agent. They can't talk to the player, just to clear that up.
Yep.
Unless unless they're representing themselves. And Bobby Wagner still, I believe, is representing himself. I know Richard Sherman might have late in his career.
Yep.
Obviously, 99.9% of the players have agents. But the bottom line is, yeah, you're right. The league year starts for us today at 12 p.m. Eastern. Nobody waits anymore. In fact, will one be leaked at 12:01 p.m. Eastern, which would tell you, oops, I guess they weren't waiting till 12 o'clock to negotiate that one.
No, come on. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
It just took a minute to consummate a 6-year, $220 million deal. That's all.
Unless, of course, it's their own player. But no, it's kind of comical. But look, the league loves the attention. It's great. It's too bad it doesn't last longer than it does. Because, as I said, at 4 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, it's anticlimactic because it's kind of like, oh, well, the second wave actually does start on Wednesday, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. The true winners of free agency are those who let the guys who are good go and get great money, but then wait on the guys who are average, right? Or good, and then make average money, which the Eagles have done a good job of in the past at times. Not so much last year, but Howie Roseman's been good at that. Speaking of the NFL liking things, Adam, I can't remember so much happening like 24 hours before the start of the legal tampering period as what's gone on in the last 24 hours between, Baker Mayfield extension, Chris Jones's extension, Fletcher Cox retires. We'll get into that. There were a couple of other deals that were, or trades and things that have gone on the last 2 or 3 days that, it's just like, bam, we're used to teams coming back from the combine and then giving their own guys extensions within that time. And you saw some of that, but this one really came down to the wire. And then there was just like, bang, 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 news.
Yeah, and Bayer, guys who were released are finding jobs, so it's good. There's a lot of money, a lot of cash teams have. Cap is up, cash is up. Cash spending is going to be up for, including the Eagles. A lot of teams are going to be spending money.
Mm-hmm.
And almost all teams are in good cap shape. There's still a couple stragglers. You saw what Buffalo did. Though most teams will tell you it is very little to do with the cap. Not with Buffalo. They had a major cap problem. And they made a decision they were not going to restructure a bunch of deals and just kick the can down the road like the Saints do. They refused. They just refused to cut it. They won't. Michael Thomas's contract was structured for a release, but it's just kind of comical. They're like, someone should make a meme of Mickey Loomis and Kai Hartley. Mickey's the GM and Kai Hartley does the contracts. Maybe Jeff Ireland getting a can and kicking it down the road, because that's all they do. They just refuse to cut players. Good for them, though.
I feel
Never
like a
cut
really
again.
good meme or cartoon would be a cartoon version of Howie and a cartoon version of Mickey Loomis or the other guy that you said that does cat. It's just both of them kick like a
Guy Hartman.
race to
Yeah.
kick the can as far down the road as possible. Because like I said, there might be guys under contract when we're 6 feet under.
Oh no, what it is right with the Eagles. It's with the avoidable
Coming
years.
years,
We're going to
right?
look this up for you when we do our contract show, typically in June. We're going to see who leads the NFL in voidable years. It's got to be the Eagles. I know the Saints are right up there, and the Eagles are definitely up there with option bonuses. But that's the way they agents tell you. We've used this before. Eagles in their typical BS structure. They I won't curse here. I'll try not to. It's kind of
Yep.
funny. But anyway, so we'll get into it. We're going to get in the contracts and obviously or free agency in a couple of minutes here. But yeah, the big story, which we'll talk about to lead this off in a minute here, is Fletcher Cox retiring. Oh, what was it on Sunday? I think he retired.
Fletcher Cox announced his
Sunday?
retirement on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
you and I have
Wow.
talked
Yeah.
about this. Like those close to
Yeah.
Fletch and people we spoke to felt that he had made his decision already and it was just a matter of announcing it. But, you never know.
Yeah.
You want to always keep the door open. It felt like it was leaning
Hmm.
that way, just like we were talking about with Jason Kelsey and yeah, Fletcher Cox. And you know what? Well, we'll get into the Cox retirement in a second because I have some interesting
Hmm.
thoughts on that. But when
Okay.
you have Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox retire in the same offseason, and you start to look at
Yeah.
the Eagles, you're like, wow, those two decisions right then and there make the Eagles a whole lot younger on paper now. And they needed to get younger, but they still need to be good. And those were two players, ironically, who retire at a time in which they're both were playing at a pretty high level. So that's a conundrum for the Eagles, as we'll get into, because it's one thing when a player retires because he's at the end of his rope and he just doesn't have more left and you say goodbye. And it's one thing when two guys who you've been relying on to play really meaningful snaps and have helped you win the Super Bowl and brought you to another say goodbye. And yes, you've tried to stockpile your team to replace them, but it's hard to just replace them immediately. That's going to be a challenge for this team.
Well, you mentioned it. The young kids have got to play, and we'll break down the Fletch situations and the BG's back, and which is really cool, which we all expected. It's funny with Fletcher Cox. I mean, he did an interview at the Super Bowl with our friend Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN Radio in Atlantic City, and Mike said after the interview, he goes, "If I didn't know any better, it sounds like Fletcher Cox is retired." Just the way Fletch, he didn't say he was retiring, but when you read into body language or what guys are saying.
Yep.
He's like, man, it sure sounds like he hadn't made a decision yet, but he goes, man, it doesn't sound like he's going to be playing anymore. But as you said, you never know. And here we are 3 weeks later, and yeah, he is retiring. End of an era. In fact, 2012 draft, man, that was I just and Jim Washburn was super high on him. That he called him country strong and all that. You were working for CSN Philly then. Do
Yeah.
you remember when he came in? Any initial thoughts on him?
So the
Fletch?
first thing I remember, I posted this on X a couple of hours after Fletch retired. The first thing I remember is the Eagles signing a free agent sometime in March. It wasn't like one of the first high level guys. It was mid March,
Okay.
when at the same time that they were doing top visits for the prospects, and
Okay.
we were all in the rotunda at the NovaCare complex interviewing some like second, third wave free agent guy, and Jim
Huh.
Washburn walks by with Don Terry Poe, the huge tackle from
Yeah.
Memphis,
Yeah.
right? And as he's walking by us, and the Eagles used to make it was weird because the Eagles, used to bend over backwards to make sure we didn't know who was in the building. And here we are interviewing a free agent signing, and there's Jim
Ah,
Washburn just walking by with
oh.
Don Terry Poe. So all of a sudden, Washburn stops, looks at us, and goes, "What's up, everybody? I want you to meet Fletcher Cox." And we're all
Oh,
like, "Wait,
Wash.
what?"
Oh, Wash said that.
Yeah, Jim Washburn goes, "Yeah, everybody meet
Yeah.
Fletcher Cox," and Poe starts laughing and waves, and like you got to remember, like you feel like you know who guys are, but you never see them unless you're at the combine and they work out. And we were all pretty sure that was Don Terry Poe and not Fletcher Cox, but until you see guys up front, you're not sure. So then we were all like, wait, looking at our phones, checking. No, we know that's Don Terry Poe. They were just Washburn was just messing around with us, but it was kind of funny. But yeah, to get to your point, I remember when Fletcher Cox came in, he was a 12th overall pick, and there was a little bit of this. It wasn't, I would say, skepticism over the pick because he was certainly regarded as a top 15 prospect and a good player coming out of Mississippi State. But the last two defensive tackles I think the Eagles had taken first round were Broderick Bunkley and Mike Patterson, who were good.
Mm,
Patterson was good. He played for a while. I wouldn't say like stud. I don't think he ever made a Pro Bowl, right? Or maybe he made one. I don't know. And Bunkley did
no,
not live up to the billing.
definitely.
So we were all wondering if the Eagles had sort of lost their mojo, right, with defensive tackles. This was the last year, I think, of Andy at that point. He
Yep.
didn't come in and start right away, but he came in. And the one thing that you noticed, you just said country strong, is that Fletch had the ability to displace people, right? To just physically
Mm.
move them for a guy who doesn't look yoked up. He could just physically move them and get to the court. And you saw that burst pretty easily right away. And then remember, they were running the wide nine system. So that really helped really show those abilities that he had. But if you look at Fletcher Cox, you don't look at a guy who you think is all yoked up and twitchy, and he's just country strong. He is physically able to move people, yet you don't see like bulging bicep. He just looks like your normal defensive tackle, which is it's an unbelievable trait.
When he the word, around the team and also from teams playing him, when he decides he's taking over, literally no one can stop him.
Mm-hmm.
He's that strong and dominant, where he takes on two blockers and he just displaces them. It's actually kind of interesting to watch him pick guys up and throw them. It's pretty cool. When there were years when there were some years he wasn't as good as others, but when he was elite, and he definitely was elite at part of his career, he just could take over games like a year ago. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
It's really
100%.
cool to watch the all 22. It's pretty cool. So, and as we mentioned prior to the start of the season, boy, did he become a team leader. We really never talked about that before, but what we were told was he kind of sensed that they were getting younger and obviously the two young tackles, and he really did a good job. And there's a great video on the Eagles social about him. I love the 3 or 4 minute piece that they did on him, and just talk. You could see how much it meant to him, and he loves the area. We said that we'd never, even if he decided to come back and play, we just, based on what we know, he loves being an Eagle and he loves living in this area, and it just didn't seem like he'd ever play for another team, even if he decided to play.
Yeah. So Fletcher Cox will be an Eagles Hall of Famer. There's no doubt about
Oh
that.
yeah,
Six
oh yeah,
Pro
oh
Bowls.
yeah.
He only made one All Pro, but I think he made two or three second team All Pros. So sometimes they count that both. You could say four All Pros if that's the case, but one first team All Pro. He was a member of the All Decade team, the 2010s. So I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know if he's going to make the Hall of Fame. I think he's going to be borderline. I think he's going to get votes,
Yep.
obviously. I think you can make an argument that from 2015 to 2020, maybe only Aaron Donald was better. I don't know. I forget what year Aaron Donald came into the league. He's clearly a better defensive tackle because he's the best, Aaron
Yep.
Donald.
Yep. Yep.
JJ Watt was in there. So like he was always among the elite. I don't know, but he has 70 career sacks, which is a lot for an interior lineman. So that helps his cause. How many do you think Warren Sapp has? Sapp played for
He's in. I have no idea.
Yeah, he's in.
Yeah,
He
no
has
idea.
96 and a half career sacks.
Okay.
But if you think about it, 77 with Tampa for those first 9 years. He played 4 more years with Oakland and sort of compiled more sacks, but that's still very impressive. Fletch,
Four.
Fletch
Geez,
could play.
4 more
You could
years. Wow.
argue Fletch
Mhm.
could play 4 more years and probably get himself at least 20 to 25 more sacks and be sort of in that terrain, but he's calling it quits. And so we'll see how the Hall of Fame committee views that.
Yeah, 33 years old. He still has he had plenty. In fact, he was coming off such a strong year. Clearly had plenty left in the tank. But the other question would be if he wanted to play, what would be willing to do in terms of snaps, but that's out the door. And we'll finish this off in a couple
Mhm.
minutes, but when we come back to it. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because that was obviously the big news on Sunday. And boy, it's just, I don't know about you, but when I would go to training camp, it's always interesting. You see the turnover in the roster or the personnel staff, and you go, man, I don't recognize these people. Who are these? A lot of change here.
Yeah.
The next question is, who are the leaders? Like, who's left? I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, Lane is one. Um,
I still think Jalen Hurts
uh,
will be
uh,
a leader of a team, even though that there was some question about
sure, but
how he led. But
right,
yeah.
well, he's quarterback, but non-quarterback. Like, and I know people want to be more of a leader, but Lane is an obvious one. We all
Mhm.
know that.
Yeah.
Other
I
than
don't know how
that,
you would classify Slay. He'll be an experienced player who I think some guys like his personality. But I don't know if like when the times are tough, Slay is the guy that rallies you through the way
yeah.
Lane Lloyd, the way Fletcher Cox was known, the way Jason Peters was known for really being an influence on the young offensive linemen. Brandon Graham is back, so he's a leader. He's definitely a leader on the
It
team.
would be one for sure. In fact,
Yeah.
he was talking about that in his interviews on Saturday. Yeah, he
Right.
definitely will do that. Yeah, no, even though he's a backup, he gives them so much more. There's no question about it. But there is, not that you want Fletcher Cox to retire, but there's an upside here that it forces more guys to understand. Okay, I need to be more of a leader because he was the top one on defense, as we were told. So um, some guys got to speak up a little bit,
Mhm.
maybe a little bit more, and we'll have to see. Sometimes the guys get it and they go, okay, well Fletcher's gone, so I got to speak up more and I got to be there for my guy, kind of thing.
All right, as we move on, we're going to talk a little bit more about the team as it looks right now with both, Graham coming back, Fletcher Cox retiring. The comp picks have been announced. We'll get into that a little bit. And then, of course, we will, Adam and I have been exhausting the phone calls over the past God knows how long. And, we've got a pretty good bead, we believe, on what the Eagles are at least looking at and what their tendencies will be here with the free agency period. Again, that will technically not begin today at noon, but will begin today at noon. And we're going to go through all that too. So we've got a lot of stuff. Now, if there's something huge, Adam and I will do an emergency podcast if we have to. But, signing a big name isn't necessarily huge because that's what teams do during the free agency period. So more than likely,
Sure.
unless there's something like that warrants us to do an emergency pod, you'll hear from us again on Thursday in our normal pod, and we'll wrap up anything that's happened
6
from
a.m.
today to
Yeah,
then.
6
Yeah,
a.m.
6 a.m. If you're on our Patreon channel, you'll obviously get to hear us first, and that's patreon.com/inside the birds, because we're going to do our normal Ask ITB live stream on Wednesday night, right?
Yes, and we also, if you're on Discord, we have our channel there, and we drop some hints on free agency. Some of it got out. We got it out there, by mid next week and last week, and then some of the stuff came out over the weekend. So we try to tip you off when we can, just kind of stuff that may or may not happen, but stuff that's on our radar and others as well. So, yeah, if you like Discord, we've got a channel there, and our live stream this Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Typically go an hour. Patreon.com/inside the birds to subscribe.
There you go. We want to welcome Alex and Sean, our newest subscribers. So they will obviously get some stuff first by being part of our Patreon channel. Again, it's patreon.com/inside the birds. And so again, you'll hear from us Thursday, and we've got stuff. We'll have coverage, including I'm going to have Adam's free agency rankings up on our website at some point today. And then we're going to have a free agency tracker on the website as well, insidethebirds.com, and Andrew DeCecco, myself, and Benjamin Paul, our great intern. We're going to be updating the website constantly throughout the free agent period to update all of the signings and everything like that. So make sure you are bookmarking insidethebirds.com and making routine visits to the website, because we will have everything covered from that vantage point. All right, that's about it for cover. Oh, and then of course, just to let everybody know, the intel with Greg Cosell, the next one's probably going to come out next week, where we wrap, or later this week or next week. I forget what we planned, but we're going to wrap up.
Should be
next week. We'll be wrapping up the free agent signings by the Eagles and some of the bigger names. We'll get Greg's breakdown on them, and then right after that, we go right into NFL draft preview coverage. So
Can't wait.
If you haven't yet, you got to listen to it, because Greg's been doing a great job breaking down. Even dropped a little bit of a nugget, that, as we like to say, on a recent one for NFL free agency previews. So Greg's doing a good job.
But
Make sure you check it out.
Yeah, and appreciate the comment. Yeah, appreciate the comments. Keep watching and listening. It's on every platform, and it helps us. The traffic really helps us a lot. And I know we get with listeners from other teams. It's actually really cool. Or fans of other teams. It's actually very cool. We see them chiming in, so they like Greg's breakdowns, and we'll see what happens. So yeah, that's coming up as well.
All right, good stuff. All right, we're going to pause real quick to hear a word from our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
All right. Adam, I just want to put a bow here on Fletcher Cox retiring because you asked a really pertinent question about the leaders. And I remember Mike Gill asked me the same question in an interview. And the one thing you can't discount, the Eagles have done a pretty good job of this over the last few years, is even getting guys. You don't normally think as a free agent signing as a guy who can come in and be an immediate leader because they're not part of the team. They're not part of the culture. But I remember when the Eagles signed Malcolm Jenkins, who was known for being a stand-up guy, a leader with New Orleans, solid citizen. And when he came to the Eagles, he was very deferential to D'Amico Ryans. D'Amico was Mufasa. He was the leader of the defense at that point. Everybody followed in D'Amico's lead. But you remember D'Amico got hurt that year again. You know, he had gotten the season ending. Was it the Achilles injury that he had?
Achilles, yeah.
Yeah. And so right after that, you started to immediately see Malcolm take his roots onto the defense and start to establish. So even though he was in his first year with the Eagles, he was a veteran guy. And I say that to say, let's see what the next 2 or 3 days are like as the Eagles bring in some free agent signings, because there are some guys out there who are known for being really good locker room and clubhouse guys, and those can add to your leadership element. But I think you're right. And I think when you look at the team right now, when you say goodbye to Kelsey and you say goodbye to Cox in the same offseason and you look at the roster, like we know the Eagles needed to get younger, but wow. I mean, they're you know, outside of Lane Johnson and outside of Brandon Graham, they're pretty darn young at a lot of
I like it.
positions.
I think it's awesome. I think it's great. I mean, it's about time, to be honest with you. And they could still win. Look, well, again, we'll see what they do in free agency. They also have the draft, and we'll get to the comp picks. We'll go over them quickly in a minute here, but there's plenty of talent here. They're not in a rebuild. They're in a kind of retooling of the roster. That's probably the best term of it. They proved in 2021 that they got to the playoffs. The roster wasn't great, but really good coaching that year, and they somehow got in the playoffs, and they were kind of reshaping the roster. They're going to go with a roster reshaping really on defense. Offensively, they're in pretty good shape, just a couple tweaks, but it's going to be fun to see what Howie does here. And we'll talk about in a couple minutes here. And that's always interesting because last year was so economical, like the most economical free agency. Not only this is our 8th year doing this. I mean, I've covered this team on and off for 25 years. I've never seen anything like it last year. In fact, they'll never say this, but obviously part of it was getting some good comp picks, and boy, did they do well with them. But they got to hit on more free agents. I understand they were cheap last year. That was obviously land. Their cash spend was going to be down, but man, there's an opportunity here to strike. They have a lot of needs. I know you don't want to build your roster for free agency; it doesn't work, but there are some good free agents out there, which we'll get into today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a fun to go through it all. The comp picks, as you mentioned, being announced. They actually let's circle back. BG 1 more year and no Cox.
Yep.
How are you seeing this defensive line situation right now? It's a lot younger. We talked about what Howie said it at the combine. It's that Nick Sirianni has the green light to start playing younger players, and clearly that's going to start happening here. First of all, we know Jordan Davis. He's a younger player, but he's obviously got to be a third-year player now. He's got to really come into his own this year, and they must make sure his conditioning's there. And it's really on him. The team does everything it can do, but it's really on Jordan Davis to get himself in the right conditioning, the right weight to be able to be, you know, a starter and play at least 55% of the snaps, if not more. And then Jalen Carter's going to have to make, it's got to be, well, it depends on whether they view him as a pass rusher or not. He's at least got to be able to play almost every first and second down.
Exactly. He's got to be first and second down always. And yes, you're right. It's pass rusher. He's not yet. And the hope was at some point during his first 4 seasons, he would be, but they didn't trade up for him to be a part-time player. Like he's got to be more of a factor. Now, my understanding is he's got to get his weight in order. Don't know exactly we don't know exactly where his weight was. We just know it needs to be better. And because you saw the technique second half of the season was poor. It got stood up to, it's all tape based. All for information is always tape based when it comes to player reviews. He's got to be better with technique. And that's it. It's got to be in better shape. Jalen Carter faded late, but it's those two guys. It's Milton Williams on the final year of his rookie deal is an outstanding 3. That's the way they see him. Mm-hmm. And obviously sometimes depending on what kind of front and what Fangio does, and we'll learn more about that in OTAs about how he's going to deploy these guys here. Because it's always going to be different when the master of the Fangio defense is here, Vic. So we'll see. Could Marlon Tuipulotu get involved? Could Moro Jomo? The only question here is, do they bring one veteran in? Because they are really young on that front. They certainly have good young talent. They have some young depth, but they really could use a veteran. We'll see if they bring anyone in.
Yes, like they did last year with Contavious Street. Yeah, I agree with you. It would be helpful to have a veteran there. BG, Adam, it feels to me like this will definitely be his last year. And I say that because in interviews that he's been doing, he's been saying, my goal has been to play 15 years in the league, and this will be his 15th season. So it feels like he's coming back to reach that objective. And by the way, he's still playing at a level where he should come back and be a situational pass rusher. He's a leader. He's good against the run. He can play multiple type positions. I mean, more D end than stand up, but he can stand up if he needs to. And he brings a lot to this young defense. In fact, I think it was essential to bring him back now with Cox gone to have that leadership on the defensive line and in that pass rush.
Yeah, and he does turn 36 in April. A team record 15 straight years. That's incredible.
Amazing.
That's the thing about BG. In a league where if you play more than 5 years, that's saying something. And if you play into your early 30s, that's really great. Majority of the players don't. They're not quarterbacks or punters or kickers or long snappers. And the fact that at 36, he's still playing at a high enough level that he absolutely has value, not just from a leadership standpoint, but from a performance standpoint, he can give him something. And boy, they need his leadership, man. They are, and I love what he said in his interviews about he knows he might even have to step it up more with Fletch gone.
Mm-hmm.
Or he didn't really mention Fletch, but he knows that Kelsey was gone, and there's just not enough older guys, which is kind of cool, though. To be honest with you, I'm for as long as you and I have done the show, we haven't really seen a team this young. I think it's really cool. And we'll see which veterans they get in free agency. But overall, you're right. This is a pretty young team.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? About to get younger when the draft comes through, because the Eagles have a bunch of picks. They added 4 picks through the comp pick formula. Now, for those who don't know, the comp pick formula is determined by the number of players you lose in free agency and then the size of their contract also versus the number of players you gain and the size of their contract. There is a point, we talk about this all the time because the Eagles are very good at manipulating this. There is a period where you can sign free agents and it doesn't count against the comp pick formula. I think it basically is in late April or May, right? Where the whole, and the Eagle, all of a sudden the Eagles sign like 4 guys to 1-year contracts, like they did with LeGarrette Blount a couple of years ago, and they don't get hurt by it.
I mean, they didn't. I mean, you look, first of all, every contract was economical. Mariota, I believe. Let me just double check this. Mariota got the highest deal at $5 million. Okay, fully guaranteed.
By far,
I don't know
then, right?
What's that?
By far, that probably was the highest deal by far.
I'm looking at all their signings. They're just, in fact, some of them were cut, like Dan Arnold, Dennis Kelly. They were signed later anyway. Josh Andrews, Alan Blue was signed. But yeah, all of them were bargain basement. And Mariota, that's the going rate for and we'll have some information on him later. But yeah, that was their plan. They were going to have a low cash spend, and that's what they did. They part of free agency, as we always tell you folks, is extending your players, Hurts and Johnson, re-signing Kelsey, Boston Scott, BG, Bradbury, Slay, Cox. Those all count, but they don't count against the formula. I'm just saying they count in your cash spend, which is way more important than cap.
Right.
So kudos to Andrew Brandt for, I don't know if you saw Andrew Brandt's tweet, was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Backing up what I've been saying, I don't know how many years. The public and some of the media, they look at cap, but it's really all about cash from the club side.
Yep.
And you should see it. He had a great tweet. It summarizes what we've been telling you. And stop worrying about cap, folks. Worry about cash spend. That's what presidents and owners care about. And I remember talking to one GM one year. A guy had been with the team for several years. He no longer is, but he said one year he had to go to his owner and president and say, "Listen, we need a little bit more cash." And he dreaded waking up that day. He goes, he knew he had to go in. It wasn't a lot more, but they needed a little bit more. And it's the worst feeling when you have to ask for more cash. It's kind of embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of where the money went. And he's like, we got to get a little bit more. So anyway, that is that. So basically,
mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I was gonna
What do
say,
they have
so
in the
the
pick?
so the Eagles have 8 total picks now in the draft.
7. I think it's 7.
They have a
What,
first,
is it 7?
they have two
Yep.
twos, they have a
Okay.
3, so that's 4 right there. Then 3 in the 5th, that's
Okay.
7, and then 1 in the 6th, so that would be 8.
They have an 8. Okay, they have 8.
Yeah.
So what is it they have? How many of their are their own?
8 total and 4 on their own. The highest one they got was the third round. They didn't have a third round comp pick. They got a third round comp pick for losing essentially Javon Hargrave to that huge deal to the Niners and not signing anybody to a huge deal. So nothing could cancel it out. They get the third round pick, which is 97th overall. So they got their first round pick. They got the 2 second round picks, 50 and 53rd. They got the third round pick, which is 97 overall. They have their own no fourth round pick. They have their own 5th round pick, which is 160th overall. They actually acquired that from Tampa Bay. And then they got 2 5th round compensatory picks back to back, 170 and 171 overall. And then they have a 6th round comp pick. That one probably for losing TJ Edwards, right? Yeah, to Chicago. So that is 8 altogether, which is a good number.
8. Yep.
Now, if they actually
what's
make 8
interesting?
picks,
So
I would retire. They will not make 8 picks, knowing Howie Roseman. He'll be wheeling and dealing, but it's a good total to have.
it's so their owns the ones that they own that were theirs were the first 22nd overall, second round pick, 53 overall, 5th round number 160 overall, and what the hell is the other one? First, second, and a 5th. Where the hell is the other? Where's the other pick? First, second. What am I missing here?
I don't know. We got the first round pick because
Okay, the New Orleans. Okay, that was okay. They got okay. That's the one they got from New Orleans. That's the 5th one. Okay,
Right.
that they got in that trade from 2 years ago
Yeah,
with the
that
Saints.
was.
Okay,
By the way,
yeah.
I think about that trade all the time. I was convinced that the New Orleans Saints made that deal with the Eagles to get a first round pick because they were going to take a quarterback. And I remember saying, you don't make a deal like that and give up that kind of future, a first round pick and a future second if you're not either taking a quarterback or a big time pass rusher. And then I think they took the left tackle who didn't work out for him, right? What's the name of the left tackle?
Penning. Is it Trevor Penning?
Isn't that the guy? I don't know. Don't quote me on this, but I thought
He
that
got benched. Yeah, you're
right.
right. In fact, you nailed it. He actually wound up getting benched. In fact, I remember my mock for Pro Football Network. I seriously consider putting a left tackle. It's funny you mentioned that because that was what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, do they give up on him, or should I put a left tackle in there because they have other needs? Man, yeah. So they've got 8 picks. They got the maximum 4 picks. Boy, the Eagles nailed it. In fact, Roseman said a lot of interviews, media interviews, he kind of said, yeah, I think we're going to get 4 picks.
Yes, he nailed it well. He did. Now, the amazing thing is that they actually got a higher comp pick for losing Andre Dillard than for losing TJ Edwards, even though Edwards is, a way better linebacker than Dillard left tackle. But because left tackle signed bigger deals and get more money, right, the size of the contract factors into the comp pick formula. And Dillard actually wound up getting a decent deal from the Titans. He did not play very well for them. He wound up getting benched, as you mentioned. Yeah. And again, it's also Seumalo, who did play well, signed even though it was late, he signed a nicer deal than Edwards as well and got them a 5th round comp, whereas Edwards got a 6th round comp. All right. So
yeah, I had heard that Isaac was their best lineman. Just going to tell you that. What a signing! I mean, who knew? I mean, he's a good player, man. By the way,
I mean, it really doesn't surprise us because we came back from the combine last year and we had heard that a lot of teams had Seumalo as their top rated guard, and we had also heard if there were going to be any obstacles or if he doesn't sign immediately, it's because of his long injury history, which wound up hurting him a little bit in that the Steelers didn't sign him immediately. In fact, they waited. He was almost in the 2nd or 3rd week, I think, Adam, of free agency when he signed with the Steelers. And it wasn't like a huge 5 or 6 year deal. It was a nice deal, but it wasn't probably what the number 1 guard on the market is normally going to get because of that injury history that he had. But it did wind up, he stayed healthy. He was productive. The Steelers were so much better. They got better as the season went on, especially run blocking. And yeah, he was a huge part of that. Him and the first round
player, man.
They got. Yeah. It's been a really good player. Absolutely. And as we talk about the Eagles, Adam, going forward, I mean, now you look at Cam Jurgens at center and whoever's playing right guard, whether it's somebody they draft or Tyler Steen or Jack, I mean, we'll talk about this, but it's hard to say you're just going to step right in and play at that level. That was when you had Kelsey and Sayamalo there, you had such an excellent center right guard combo. And, it's going to be hard to just be exactly in sync in the same high level of play going forward next year.
It's going to be a challenge. I mean, Jeff Stoutland's got he's got his work cut out for him. We'll see. Juergens certainly had his moments at right guard. Now, they have the two moves. Juergens moves from right guard to center. Right guard's open. Their hope is Steen will get it. It's not far from a lock. I mean, we'll see if they add anyone. But the bottom line is they've got some changes. That's really, to be honest with you, that as of right now, barring something unforeseen or something we were not expecting, or you never know. But in the end, that's the big change right now is on the offensive line and the interior. I mean, they haven't had a lot of change on the offensive line. In fact, they added Dixon. They haven't missed a beat with him. Who knew about Mailata? Lane's this absolute superstar. He's going to the Hall of Fame someday. I wonder, before we move on here, I wonder how Lane feels about all the change and all the older guys, the OGs leaving, I wonder how he feels about this.
I'm surprised he hasn't posted something on X where that meme of Travolta from I think Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
Walks into the room and he kind of looks around. And it's like, what? There's also the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air one where Will Smith walks into an empty room and he's just looking for everybody and nobody's there. So I imagine that's a similar feeling for Lane Johnson. Thank God for BG coming back. They have each other. All right, you ready to empty the notebook?
It's cool. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, well, hang on, make sure we didn't miss anything here. That's it. Yeah, let's go. Let's get right to it. So offensively, you want to start there?
Well, first I want to tell everybody about our friends at HelloFresh. And whether your resolution is to save money, eat better, or stress less, HelloFresh is here to help you do all three. Say hello to your most delicious year yet with fresh ingredients and chef-crafted recipes at a price you're going to love, delivered right to your door. So you've resolved to actually sit down and eat dinner around the table. What do you do about those nights when your schedule is jam-packed? That's basically been Adam and I for the last 5 or 6 nights, right? That's when we turn to HelloFresh's lineup of quick and easy meals. You got to eat right between the phone calls, right? Including their 15-minute recipes that are designed to help minimize mealtime stress. That is our type of meal. Every time we eat HelloFresh meals, it doesn't matter if it's quick and easy or just one of their normal ones, we're blown away by the freshness, taste, and overall quality. We've tried so many great options for people who love chicken, for people who love steak, for people who love seafood, vegetarians, anyone who loves variety. There's always a great meal waiting for you. There's always a great deal waiting. And the latest one from HelloFresh is if you go to HelloFresh.com/EaglesFree, use the promo code EaglesFree, you get free breakfast for life. That's one breakfast item per box while your subscription is active. Free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com/EaglesFree with code EaglesFree. That's all one word, lowercase EaglesFree. Act now for America's #1 meal kit. All right. I
got to get that. I want breakfast for life.
Yes, definitely. It's a great deal. Breakfast for life.
I have mushroom sandwich because they send you everything. Like they send you the condiments and everything, and it's fresh, so it's pretty good. And the good thing is it doesn't take long to prepare, man. I'm in and out in less than 5 minutes, so it's good.
Nice, love it. Do you want to start with defense first? Because I feel like there's more news on defense.
Yeah, it could take an hour. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I mean we could just literally do a podcast series on.
There's just so much smoke. This year is interesting because the Eagles have a lot of cash. A lot of cash, but they have plenty of cash to spend. It's like they kind of saved up after not spending anything last year,
right? Right.
And they've got plenty of cap space. So. Look, there's so much smoke out there. We can't address every rumor, folks. We just can't. They're literally like, oh, the Eagles are interested. Like there are like 30 names out there. We're going to address some of the ones we know, and we're going to put a disclaimer. And we say this every year, folks. We're just saying here are the players are interested in. We're not saying they're signing them. It's like the year we put the heavy scoop on Byron Jones. We never said they're signing him. We said they're seriously interested. They're all in. Yep. We didn't say they're signing him because they had competition. As a matter of fact, I remember they beat the Raiders. Okay, they actually outbid the Raiders, but he wanted to go to Miami, and that's that. So we'll see what happens. I make no predictions because we have no control over it. It's a waste of time otherwise. But we wish the Eagles good luck. It's going to be fun because it's going to be a fun week. That's all I could tell you because Geoff and I we've got our eyes on some things that may or may not happen. We'll see what happens. Some guys out there. There's the sweat stuff out there. We'll address it. We'll address that in a second. But everybody knows about the Reddick situation, and then there's some other things brewing. We never know what this general manager does. He likes to shake things up, so we'll see.
He does. And it looks like a big shakeup is coming here on defense. So let's go through the Eagles free agents on defense. At linebacker, you got Zach Cunningham, Shaq Leonard, Nick Morrow, and Sean Bradley, who people have forgotten about, is coming back from it was Achilles or ACL? Sean Bradley.
Torn Achilles.
Torn Achilles, right. Tough one to come back from. The first three, Cunningham, Shaq Leonard, Nick Morrow. Don't see... You just never know. Like nothing early in free agency. Nick Morrow is not coming back. I think we already talked about that. I'd be shocked if Shaq Leonard is back unless it's way later. But I don't know, Adam. Do you have any feel either way on any of these guys? It feels like from what we've just talked to, people we've talked to, the Eagles will be looking at linebacker and they're trying to get younger and not these guys who we just mentioned.
Well, look, Zach Cunningham, again, when he was healthy, played very well to terms of run, and he didn't get crushed against the pass like maybe we thought might happen based on his history in coverage. He was actually serviceable in coverage, but see, the thing is, you got Nakobe Dean, who's barely played. He's been hurt for a lot of his first 2 years. We know that they want to pencil him as a starter. We know how talented he is, but he's got to stay on the field. And it's not like Cunningham's 35, but you can't have two guys who've been hurt a lot. So you can't depend on him. It has nothing to do with how much you can potentially pay Cunningham. It's about availability.
Right.
And that's what they need. They need guys who are on the field, know? And Shaq Leonard, it's not his fault. They were desperate. He got thrown in there late. They changed the defense. It wasn't fair to him.
No, but he didn't look like he had. I mean, he looked like we know why the Colts cut him. I mean, that's fair to say.
I know.
Yeah.
And Greg Cosell said he definitely looked like he had lost a step when he watched the Colts. He looked like he didn't look quite the same. And we'll never know. Good luck to him. We'll see where he ends up. But so that would be the inside linebacker off the ball free agents. On a corner, Bradley Roby, who did okay when healthy. Remember, he got hurt. What did he have? A hamstring? Was it a hamstring?
It was some kind of leg injury that put him out for a while. Yeah, hamstring, right?
Okay, so whatever it was, lower body injury, like the hockey injuries. So he's out there, but we know some nickels are looking at. Avonte Maddox obviously was released, so he's a street free agent. They haven't closed the door on him. Then at safety, Kevin Byard was cut. They never closed the door, but they weren't waiting for him, and he signed with Chicago on Sunday.
Good for him, by the way,
so
to be able to get that deal. Yeah.
Yeah, it was reported 2 years, $14 million. I don't know what the full guaranteed signing is, which just really tells you what the real money is. I'm guessing the guarantee in the first year is pretty good. He's made a lot of money in his career. Was a terrific player. It's a shame it didn't work out. That's another one where, okay, maybe his tape wasn't good when he played for the Eagles, but again, as we said 2 months ago, he was playing in 3 different schemes last season, so it wasn't really fair to him.
Right.
Oh well. And Justin Evans, do we need to even check on this? How could you possibly bring it back? Nice guy. It's a shame. God, do you remember in your career the guys had worse luck than this? I would say Cornelius Ingram, who I know we mentioned somehow recently. I just don't know if anyone has injury cross career. Poor guy.
No, I mean Marlon Jackson. I remember he was known for being hurt, and then he signed him. Then he got hurt with the Eagles. Cornelius Ingram's a really, really good one. There was a linebacker they had named Greg Richmond, who was a UFA or not a UFA. I'm sorry, undrafted free agent from I want to say Virginia. I forget where, but
I remember Greg Richmond.
Oklahoma State, I think, and he kept getting hurt too with a back injury. But yeah, no, I mean it's a shame. No, nothing like Justin Evans missing 3 consecutive years. With injuries. That's right. Oh, you know what? Carell Buckhalter is probably a good example. That guy kept tearing up his knee.
Yeah.
But for credit him, he kept coming back. Yeah.
It's incredible. Exactly. For him to come back. Yeah, but see, Marlon Jackson was so sad. That's when he tore his Achilles. They were indoors that day, and it happened right in front of me. I've talked about this before. I've never forgotten about it. It really bothered me.
You could hear the pop.
I don't know about you. If you've seen a player get hurt, what's that?
You could hear the pop. I remember you heard a weird noise, and then
he yelled.
Yelling. Yep. Yeah, he knew it.
And he yelled. Yeah, and that really where I felt so bad for him. He had so many injury problems. Former first round pick out of Michigan, I think,
Yes.
for the Colts.
Yes. Yep.
So anyway, all right. So defensively, that's it. I mean, really, other than Cunningham, maybe I don't. I just there are other options out there, and they're trying to get younger anyway.
Right.
And it just the patchwork. Let's call it like it is. The patchwork didn't work. I mean, I understand they don't want to spend a lot of money last season, and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to get younger.
Yeah. None of these guys you would say are priorities or have to come back immediately. So if they do come back at all. All right. So now let's get into some targets. Now I'll bring some attention that you talked about a certain edge pass rusher that Eagles could have interest in to our Patreon folks. So they know, but we'll get into this now. But first we kind of have to set the scene here because listeners know Hassan Reddick has been on the trade block. Nothing has materialized there yet. But Josh Sweat is a guy, Adam, that you told me, and I know some people are going to roll their eyes. Oh, you're saying it now. No, I can tell you, Adam gave me a call a couple of days ago and was like, "Man, I'm hearing
Friday.
some things on
Actually,
Friday on Josh Sweat," and that was surprising.
Thursday or Friday.
Yeah.
So here's my somewhat intel and just opinion. I'll give you a little bit of opinion, mix it with some intel. Final year's deal. There's been no thought of extending his contract at this point. We know he faded last season. I know he's still a young guy. That's the crazy thing. And we know he's been an incredible story of development. If you consider what he was coming back from, his football career almost ended in high school with a devastating leg injury. Such a great story of development. He turns just 27 later this month. But there's just saying in the National Football League, you don't want to wait till it's too late. You want to do it a year early. Other teams told us that he's very available. We'll see if they move him. I don't know what their asking price is. We know we had heard from other teams the Eagles want at least a second, if not more, for Reddick. We'll see where that goes, but we'll get into a edge rusher target. But for them to sign a sizable edge rusher, we're talking about money. They both would have to go to me. For me, I don't see how they could sign someone. And then remember Reddick, although Josh's money is very little. I'll look that up in a second. I think I have that. But Reddick is already making what, 15? I'll double check that. I think he's making 15 million this season.
Yeah.
They can't pay another guy
3-year 45. Yeah,
17 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There you go. 3 for 45. So yeah, it's he just faded, and it was kind of like, I don't want to say it was alarming. Was it the scheme was bad? Was it Josh faded? I don't know, man, but it was a combination of both. It wasn't good. It just wasn't good. And a couple teams tipped me off and said, "Hey, he's available." One source said, the thing is, it's like, if we traded for him, we have to figure out where he's in. That they love that he plays. He's plays the run really well. Mm-hmm. He's a better average pass rusher. He's super long. Like, he's got a lot going for him. He's a pretty good guy, but you don't know where he's at because the tape was not good enough. And I'll leave it at that. And that's kind of where that's at. So, yeah, this is, like you said, this thing could look really different. We'll get into a couple edge rusher targets. One in particular, the one of them's out already, and Bryce Huff, we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, they don't see. The thing is, Nolan Smith has to play. Like, this guy's a first round pick. He has to play, and he's very cost effective, obviously. So, which is cool. But he didn't show much. He didn't get much of a chance. So he's going to play. He can't be a backup. That cannot happen second year. So at least one has to go. Then the question is, do both go?
Right.
Reddick and Sweaty.
Right. And so, first of all, I have two thoughts on this. One, it's kind of difficult if you're trying if you know you're not going to extend Sweat. So what you're trying to do is then trade him to get something for him before you just let him walk out the door. It's a tough time to try to do that because, other teams have eyes too. They watch the tape, they evaluate it, they grade guys. And if they saw what the Eagles saw, they saw a guy who really struggled over the second half of the season and probably, know in their reports that, he was bone on bone in the knee coming out of that major high school injury. And, even Jason Avant, Greg Cosell, people who watch the tape have said it does look like he drags it at times and he was not effective. So I wonder what you might actually get for Josh Sweat, unless teams are convinced that that was just, like you said, maybe a function of the scheme, and he still has enough juice left for a good 2 years. Then maybe a team does trade for him and give him a new deal. I don't know. I just think it's a difficult time to try to get something for a guy when he's coming off really almost no production over the last 7 weeks of a season. And then the second thought I would have is that, like, we have to lay this out as it is. This is not the Eagles saving money. This has nothing to do with being conservative. We expect them to be aggressive. So if they're going to get rid of Reddick or Sweat or both, they're not just going to play some young guys and say, we'll live. They're going to be aggressive in free agency and fill that, just like kind of they did when they brought in Javon Hargrave. You know, they were turning over at that position. I forgot who started next to Cox at this point when they got Hargrave, but they were aggressive. They got Hargrave. And so I would imagine they would do the same thing. They're trying to remake this defense. And I can understand it, because one of the things we talked about at the end of last year was the way the Eagles, and this was from defensive sources that we were asking, were playing up front, specifically two gapping, holding on to their blocks too long. Linebackers were running into the backs of defensive linemen. It was discombobulated, and one person described it to me as like selfish play. They're clearly trying to remake this defensive front to fit whatever Vic Fangio wants, and then to still be a very good, powerful defensive front.
Yeah, and he's fixed up putting up with guys not playing gaps and playing with discipline, so that's not going to work.
Right.
So look, Bryce Huff's out there. We actually talked about this with our Patreon people last Wednesday, I think, last Thursday. This is the guy that they're going to look at, and why they are looking for length. They want a guy. This defense, you need some length. Remember, Draymond Jones. Draymond Jones did very well for Denver. We signed that mega deal with Seattle. Didn't have a very good first year, but he signed a big deal, and he's been a good story as a 34 end, a 5 technique.
Mm-hmm.
So he's playing with Seattle now. Bryce Huff's a guy they really like. I know the Athletic put that out there as well. We've known this for like a week or so. And the reason why I don't believe he's going to go back to the Jets, they love Jermaine Johnson, who had a breakout season. They also have Will McDonald. I know he hasn't done much, but he was a first-round pick last year, so he's got to play. They got to count for that draft pick.
Yep.
They've got John Franklin Myers and Michael Clemens was a 4th rounder 2 years ago. The Jets do, so there's just no room for him. He should see. To me, he's a 5th. I know he's only started 7 games. He's been a sub package rusher. Great story of development as a undrafted free agent. Bryce Huff, but he's going to command he should command at least $15 million. He should on the open market, because edge rushers, there's just not a lot of them out there. And he turns 26 in April. 6'3", depending on, I guess, what day it is, between 250 and 255. Out of Memphis, by the way. So what a story. Joe Douglas nailed that one. That's a hell of an undrafted free agent evaluation. So we'll see where it goes. There are going to be plenty of teams in it. And that's a guy that makes a lot of sense here, because they got to get longer at defensive end or edge rusher.
Yeah. Good point. Will McDonald is to the Jets what Nolan Smith is to the Eagles. It's a guy they got to get on the field, and that would make Huff expendable. And the second thing to that is you just wonder, and this is the perils of free agency. The Eagles have avoided this for the most part, but Bryce Huff is coming off one good year. I mean, he had 10 sacks last year. I know he's a good player, but he was a situational player the first 3 years. So the numbers don't look great. I'm not just judging sacks. I mean, you look at tackles for loss or quarterback hits. He did have a good 2022. He had 10 quarterback hits, 3.5 sacks. And again, in a situational role, that's pretty good. You just wonder about giving big money to a guy that's really kind of only had one outstanding year in the NFL. You know, you go back and think of like the Chris Clemens signing from God knows how long ago, right?
Oh man.
Jeez.
Yeah, fact. You remember the stories when it would turn out to be wrong? The media, there was a ton of speculation he was going to be cut. Yeah. And he might have, I'd have to look up how many sacks he had that year. I know the first year was not very good, but I just remember like the media was crushed. Oh, you know, when they speculated a guy could be cut, the Eagles, boy, they didn't like that. And they were like, these, I don't know if people were blogging them, but whatever was out there was just false. And they were not happy with that stuff being speculated that he was going to be cut. You know, he was a decent player. He was an edge rusher was it Seattle? He come from Seattle?
Well, he had played for Oh no, he went to Seattle after I think he wasn't he with
Okay.
Oakland? Oakland.
Raiders, yes. I
Yeah.
think it was Raiders. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. He
Well,
also
and then what was
his first 2 years was with Washington, but he barely played for them. I think Oakland is where he sort of kind of started to make a name for himself.
what was the guy from the guy's career ended with a knee problem? The guy the Eagles got, and the guy was pretty good. Didn't he come? What was the other guy's name from the Raiders? Out of Arkansas? Dark Burgess. Dark Burgess. That was the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he went to Oakland after the
Right.
Eagles.
He went
That's
to Oakland.
different.
Yeah,
He went
after the
there
Eagles,
and
right.
then had like a pretty good, like a 10 or 11 sack
Yeah.
season. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, good player.
All right. So Huff is someone to keep your eye on. I mean, obviously, I just wonder your top edge rushers are Daniil Hunter and who's the second probably most prominent name among the edge rushers?
Hunter's great. He's come off. Yeah, he's come off to Jonathan Grenard, who
Bernard. So I feel like those guys are going to get in that 17 to 20 range.
We heard Grenard anywhere from possible. I say possible because you never know. 15 to 17 million a year.
Okay.
Kind of. I didn't sound promising for him to return to Houston. We'll see. See
Right.
how that works out. But yeah, Mike Dana's out there who's on he's on the next tier. He's like really just a good all around player. You heard Cosell talk about him in our free agent series, but just a good all around player, high character, does everything well. Just not a high end edge rusher, but really good player. Daniil Hunter, who made 17 million last year, should be 17 to at least a minimum of 17, obviously in the open market, and he is the guy because he's super long, super high characters. Rick Spielman told us in our interview on Patreon a couple weeks ago, and he does everything well, and he's overcome the neck injury in the last 2 seasons. I don't think he's missed a game. He's been healthy, and somehow, for as long as he's been in the league, he's only turning he's not even 30 yet. He's 29 now, turns 30 later this year. But that would be that. Now, there is a secondary pass rusher. We'll get to in a minute, but it's just not. It's like if you don't get the high end guys, there's guys like DJ Wanham, who started. He's been a part-time starter for Minnesota, who's going to be in probably that 6 to 8 million range, maybe a little bit more. Michael Hecht is a bigger, beefier 34 front guy who could play with his hand down, stand up. They had him doing some stand up. Michael Hecht for the Rams, but he's not a great pass rusher. No, I don't see Chase Young. That would stun me. Never. I always say never, but he's just not been that player. You heard Greg on our Cosell talk about him on our series. There's some bargain basement guys you could find. You'd mentioned Charles Harris, who was benched and healthy and active, who's not going to cost anything because he wasn't even playing. But he's a guy down the line for teams. But as far as the Eagles are concerned, the one guy, and no one, it's just no. I've seen nothing out there on this guy we're about to mention, but we've got intel on this. Andrew Van Ginkel, we're hearing both sides have interest in each other. Van Ginkel and the Eagles and him. Obviously, because he played for Fangio in Miami this season, and
Played well.
Andrew accepted when Baker got hurt that they move him inside, and boy, did he do well. And we'll get to something he's dealing with an injury, but man, what a great story of development. I don't want to say out of nowhere, but he had never played to this level. He played really well before he got hurt.
Right. And it would make sense because I'm sure I'm sure something Vic did connected with him well to be able for him to play like that. It would make sense. Is he ready to go? Like, what's his deal?
Yeah, he's got a foot injury, we're told. He's still rehabbing it. He turns 29 in July. He did go on IR and he could not come back. Even if they made it to the Super Bowl, I don't believe he could have come back. So he's still working on it. He'll be fine for the season. It's just a matter of when he'll be available. We'll see where he goes here. We'll see what kind of level interest the Eagles have in him to sign him. But he's not a high-end edge rusher. He's just a good football player.
Right.
Tremendous energy and passion for the game. Talked to people who work with him before. He's just a good football player. So we'll see what happens here. He was number 43, by the way.
Well, there you go. So you wonder this, Adam. I wonder if there's any cause and effect going on in that. So there's 3 pretty good edge rushers. I would say 3 before it starts to kind of, like you just mentioned, all these pass rushers. They're all on the same level, right? There's Daniil Hunter, there's Jonathan Greenard, and then there's Bryce Huff. I don't think anybody else after that, it probably gets into that category where everyone's going to make sort of around the same money. Wouldn't you say? Like those are the
I would say
best ones.
Yeah, Dino Hunter is the number one guy. Jonathan Grenard is really close.
Yep.
Bryce Huff, look, could he get only 10 million? Sure. It just depends. He's a tough one, as you said. He's only had
Yeah.
1 year of high pass rush numbers, and plus he's been a sub package rusher almost his entire career. I think he only started 7 games.
Right.
So that's, as you said, it's hard to project that one. And there's look, the secondary market. DJ Wanham's a really good player.
Yeah, I guess the point I was trying to make is if you do not get, and we don't know if there's any interest in the first two guys we were talking about, Greenard and
Bernard.
Hunter, but if they don't get any of those three, you don't feel really good then about trading away both Reddick and Sweat, right? Like you just don't, and you wonder if that's part of the thinking, because I don't know, I'm not signing DJ Wanham and then getting rid of Josh Sweat or Reddick and feeling pretty good about my DJ Wanham / Brandon Graham / Nolan Smith,
Yeah.
top 3 passer, or even if you get Van Ginkel there, like you said, he's a good rusher, but he's not an elite guy. This is a defense that is predicated on your front 4 rush, your edge rush. And yes, they may have great expectations for Nolan Smith, but nobody's seen that yet. You have to get him on the field, but we can't say he's going to be 12 to 15 sacks. So I don't know if I'd be prone to want to get rid of one or both of those guys unless I'm at least bringing back a guy that I have graded as a really good pass rusher in this league.
Yeah, and Van Ginkel's not that guy. He's a decent pass rusher, and he's come off an injury, so we don't know, what his effectiveness will be. But yeah, to me, if you want to throw fastballs, as late Jim Johnson would say, I mean, you need depth. You need like 4 guys if you can do it. 3 is okay in terms of edge rush. You like to have 4. Now I'm counting BG, but right now under contract you've got Reddick, Sweat, both could be traded. BG's back for sure. Nolan Smith has got to play.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Johnson's only special teams final year of his deal. Tron Jackson is on the roster. Acquire they want him to compete for. In fact, they're giving enough guaranteed money, Julian Acquire, that it's almost like they're expecting him to make the team, as obviously he's a backup.
Yeah.
But you want high-end guys. You want high-end pass rusher. Bryce Huff would be that guy.
Yeah.
So we'll see where the money goes.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move to stack linebacker, inside linebacker. We've done a lot of homework on this, talked to a lot of people. I can just say from my end, I think you agree with this, that there's just a perception that the Eagles are going to do something radically different because Vic Fangio is the defensive coordinator now, and that's going to change their tune on linebacker. We've talked to some people who know the Eagles, have ties to the Eagles. We've talked to some people, agents who've worked with the Eagles, and not getting a vibe that the Eagles are going to be all that different at this position than they have been in the past. And what I mean by that is I'm not expecting Patrick Queen to be an Eagle just because Vic Fangio is now the defensive coordinator. Patrick Queen, people think, is going to make anywhere between 12 to 15 million a year, which is pretty interesting considering the Ravens thought he was good, but they needed to get Roquan Smith to play next to him. And it seemed like everybody in that Ravens scheme, everybody in that scheme kind of played well. But that's the point, is that there's going to be some market setters who are getting double-digit millions. We'll see what Frankie Louvu gets. We'll see what who else is really good linebacker that I'm not thinking of. Bobby Wagner.
By the way,
we've been told he still wants to be a double-digit per year linebacker, and you know what? He's coming off 180 tackles this last year, so the kid can still play. The guy can still play, but when we talk about the Eagles, sort of getting that sense, you start looking at the B and C level guys. And seeing where the bargains are going to be. And Adam, because there are a lot of names at the position, there might be some decent bargains out there.
All right, so a couple things here. So actually, let me correct that. Roquan Smith, 20 million a year, not 18 million a year. So yeah, there's such a now Jerome Baker, who turns just 28 in December. He's a little bit younger than I thought. He had 2 injuries. MCL sprain and the wrist surgery, either wrist or wrist surgery. I don't recall if he had the surgery or not. But anyway, the only question there is, does Vic want him? Because it's not Vic's call, but he's going to want guys to play a system.
Mm-hmm.
Josie Jewell, we as of this morning, at 6 a.m. Eastern, nothing on him yet. We've not heard him connected to the Eagles. From our sources, but doesn't mean it can't happen. Josie Jewell's going to probably cost $6 to $7 million a year. Good player, more of a 2-down linebacker, but an outstanding tackler, good player, knows Vic's system. So That's the thing, as you talk about the secondary market. You never say never. And I'm not talking about Queen here, but you never know if they get involved with, like, Jordan Brooks should be way out of their price zone. Should be. I say should be. You never know what happens once you get to free agency. Sometimes it's more than you thought. Sometimes it's less than you thought. Kenneth Murray, the Eagles were super high on for that draft years ago. But if you heard our series with Cosell, Greg's broke down his tape, wasn't very good. So what their options are, we're going to get to one of them in a second, but it's a lot of mid-level free agents, I would have to say.
Yeah, I think that's the zone where the Eagles are. There's a lot of names, and when there are a lot of names, you usually find one or two who are pretty decent who just don't find a taker because 5 or 6 guys already were taken and got paid, and there's not like 9 or 10 teams that are looking to pay that position especially. So that's when you start to get into your bargains. So maybe the Eagles will find themselves, like you brought up the guy from Seattle. Who knows? Like, I agree with you. He's probably going to get a better deal than the Eagles are willing to go for. But if you can find someone who's pretty good but gets into that, what do you think? Like that, the Eagles like to pay what, 4 to 5 million at most for linebacker. I forgot what they paid Nigel Bradham the year they got him from the Bills, but I want to say it was like 4.5. And they got such a great bargain because he had an unbelievable year for them. Then they paid him 8 and he didn't have a great year. And then they were like, went back to the bargain basement linebackers. So we'll just have to see. There are just so many names here of guys. And once they start trading uniform, I don't think the Eagles will be the team to pounce first, which made last year so weird. They were among the teams to pounce first when they signed Nick Morrow, but they gave him no guaranteed money. So you wondered why they pounced so quickly. That was a very odd sequence last year.
Yeah, I would say now, yeah, Nigel Bradham came up from Buffalo. He signed, do you know his first year with the Eagles?
It was 2000, the year they won the Super Bowl, I believe.
Actually, I think he was with them a year before. He was. He
Oh,
signed a
that's right. That's right. Yeah,
2-year deal for 7 million, 3.5 million a year.
that's Eagles.
Yeah, look, like you said, for bargain basement, 3.5 million a year, and it worked. Boy, did he play well. He's so physical and tough. So yeah, look, they're in that, they just don't spend it off the ball linebacker. This is this has been their history. They pay the lines, offensive, defensive lines. They will pay safety. Boy, they paid Malcolm really well, more than once. They paid Rodney McLeod, got a market deal in 2016. So that would be it. Obviously, they have their own list, but the one more guy we're going to talk about is Blake Cashman. We know they have interest in him. He had a really good year. Now, the one thing for him is he's been hurt a lot. He's been on IR 5 times in 5 seasons. So that's a concern. But the guy's a tackling machine. And he kind of fits, the Eagles don't usually get those guys, those stumpers. I mean, you met Bradham was, but they typically have not been. And he's kind of a smaller guy at 6'1", 235-ish. And guy's a good football player, but he was the draftee of the Jets in 2019, and he turns 28 in May and should cost a lot. We'll see what happens. We know they have some interest in him.
Here's why it was put to me that he would make more sense for the Eagles than some other guys, including Jerome Baker, who played for Vic and played, well in that Miami system, but like you mentioned, has an injury history. The problem with a Baker, Adam, is that he is similar sized and similarly talented as Nakobe Dean, meaning undersized, fast, sideline to sideline, but history of getting hurt as well. The Eagles were at their best, right, when they had a thumper like TJ Edwards, who maybe not the biggest guy, but he really was really good at making tackles. And then they had the fast guy with Kazir White. So that gave them one and the other, if you put a Jerome Baker next to Nakobe Dean, you're kind of basically putting the same type of athlete on the field. Cashman, like you mentioned, close to 240 pounds, tackling machine. And again, I think his injuries will probably push the number down. They're going to look at him and say, all right, he's been on a couple of teams. He's been hurt before. He is still young at 27, but he's not going to be like commanding $10 to $15 million a year. That might be a really sensible signing for the Eagles if some other team isn't thinking the same thing and willing to pony up a bigger price for him.
All right, I got one for you. Just getting back to Van Ginkel. So he did play inside backer. So we know Dean is expected to start if he's healthy. I mean, they pretty much are counting on that. Just to think, I'm assuming if they pursue Van Ginkel, he would play on the outside. But again, he's shown he can play inside, which I don't know if the Dolphins knew that. He was pressing the service because Baker got hurt. So just something to think about that he can do that. And he is a veteran who's been around a while. He's such a unique player, man. He's just kind of fun player. Anyone else at the off the ball linebacker?
Yeah, if the Eagles are going to make a move later in free agency, as it was described to me, sort of a second wave free agent signing, which we've talked about, the Eagles really like to specialize in that. I would look out for Oren Burks of the 49ers. You actually brought up his name weeks ago when we were just discussing, good type of fits for the Eagles. And the Eagles did check into him, but again, it was described to me as something that might be a second wave signing, maybe if they don't get what they're looking for in the first wave, or if they're just looking to add depth. Now, Oren sort of has become known as the guy who played a lot in the Super Bowl after Dre Greenlaw busted his Achilles just running onto the field. Oren Burks was the guy who replaced him in the 49ers defense. And you know what? He's a pretty good linebacker. He had a tough Super Bowl because he had to come in and he kind of got picked on, of course, by Patrick Mahomes, but decent player, more of a downhill linebacker as it was put to me. But it would just be someone to kind of monitor if we're like a week and a half into free agency or several days and the Eagles are still looking for a good bargain there in free agency.
Smart guy, Owen Burks, who played for Vanderbilt. I remember talking to one of their coaches at Vanderbilt who worked with him many years ago. That's that, but he would be the perfect Eagles bargain basement guy, but who actually could be a decent starter for at least for a year. Yeah, that's an interesting name.
Special teams.
There you go.
He's played a lot of special teams throughout his career with Green Bay and San Francisco. So that's what you need to do if you're going to be the fourth linebacker anyway. So.
Oh yeah. Speaking of special teams, the Eagles are working on getting Braden Mann back. That should happen. The punter, barring something highly unforeseen, they should be able to get him back.
Great.
More on that on Thursday, but we expect that to happen. Let me see what. Let's see. No steam on Rick Lovato. Is he up?
I think Rick Lovato is a free agent, right? Isn't he?
Oh yeah, I don't have any steam on him. No. Yeah, exactly. I love that term.
Is he going to reset the market for long snappers, Adam?
Yeah, I don't even know what the market is for long snappers. But anyway, so that's the front seven. It's kind of weird because we hear so much stuff. We kind of eliminated a lot of the riffraff on not riffraff, but just every rumor from every avenue. We can't deal with them all, folks. We just got to clean out some stuff. We'll get to offense in a minute where there's some comical ones, but we'll get into that.
Staying in the secondary, nickel corner. I just remember that when we talked about this last week, there's like 6 million nickel corners out there. It's going to be a buyer's market. The key is finding one that could stay healthy and be productive. I still think the Eagles should probably, what do you know? And then I'll give you my summary on it.
They've got some interest in Kenny Moore. I've not heard it's the cost, and he's good. He's the best one.
Yeah,
he can play outside if you need him to, but he really is an inside corner. He's really good. To me, if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, if you're close, you sign him. He's going to cost a lot. I don't know where the Eagles value him, but heard that there's at least some interest in the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But he is, and it's interesting because the Eagles have Isaiah Rodgers, which is comical. Who
that is funny.
The Patriots never should have cut. Kenny turns 29 in August. He was on IR this past season, but the only time he's been on IR in his career. But we'll see. That, like you said, there's so many nickel corners out there. We mentioned Roby. We've not heard if they have interest in bringing him back. And obviously it wouldn't cost much because he's an older player. But it's a shame we never got to see his best because he came off the injury. He got hurt early. Yeah, and it's not the outside corner market. Chido Woozy's going to make a lot of money. We're not here, and the Eagles are on him, but he's pretty much one of the top 2 or 3 guys out there. He's going to make a ton. That's not franchise. Snead is from franchise. So, but the nickels, man, I'm just going through the list. I mean, like you said, and there are also plenty of guys who could play inside or outside. And not that the Eagles want this guy back, but they should have given Kindle Vildor a much better chance.
Guy played in the NFC Championship game.
That's my point. We could argue that whether he should have been starting up. The fact of the matter is the guy did a good job for being thrown in there.
Yeah.
And he showed he could play inside or outside. I don't know what happened. The Eagles actually cut him. I checked on it. They didn't. He wasn't signed off the Eagles practice squad. He actually was cut first. Then they signed him to their practice squad, and then I think put him on the 53. But nevertheless, yeah, Chan and Sullivan. We talked about this the last show. There's so many of out there. They could, depending on how they, where the money goes with these guys, because the clubs have leverage here. They don't. They're different levels. Obviously, they're high end nickels like Kenny Moore. Then there's mid level guys, and depending on what you want.
Yeah, I mean, I still think Avonte Maddox, when healthy, is a high-end nickel, even though he didn't play great when he came back. He's just been injured so much, but, if you can get him back on a one-year deal, very, not a lot of guaranteed money, which is normally what you're doing with a one-year deal, and then draft a corner sometime that can compete at nickel, along with the kid, like you mentioned, who is still on the suspended list, has not been reinstated yet, but if he gets reinstated, then at least you give yourself some competition and you don't have to go into the year with Avonte Maddox. Plus, you'll still have Mario Goodrich again to try to groom for that position. You'll have Eli Ricks in year 2. I mean, you'll have some bodies there. I would try to bring Maddox back if I don't hit any intended other target that I have there at nickel. Only because you know what he can do when he's healthy,
Yeah, Levi Wallace is out there. Darnay Holmes, who
I like Darnay Holmes actually.
I know he got benched, but because too many penalties.
Yeah,
it's a total major buyer market. The safety and slot corner, like major buyers market, it's overglutted.
Right.
But again, it's high end safety, and then it drops off. We'll get into that in a minute. But that's that's where it's at.
So let's talk about outside corner, because as you mentioned, outside of Awuzie, who's not a high end corner, but will probably be the highest
solid
free agent or solid corner. Yeah. I think people are surprised the Eagles still have James Bradberry. Howie Roseman said at the combine he's under contract. I mean, it is a difficult contract. He's a difficult player to play right now, but he's also a difficult contract to just cut and absorb and eat that money when you're not exactly deep at that position to begin with. And again, you wonder if there's some cause and effect. The Eagles, we're not hearing much on free agency market, but the Eagles tend to surprise us with trades, right? Like when they got AJ Brown, sometimes they hit you with a trade at a position that they need. And then if you're able to make that trade, right, and then you get the guy you want and you get the contract situated, then maybe you do something with Bradberry. But for now, Bradberry is on the roster. And if they had to play today, I guess he's in the mix to start opposite Darius Slay. But fortunately, they don't have to play.
I'd be shocked.
Yeah, I know.
Like you said,
if they had to play today.
Yeah, that would be the biggest surprise of the offseason if he's starting for them. I can't see it.
Yeah. So here's a name though.
We mentioned.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Just a name.
No, go ahead. Give me your name.
Yeah, a name to be. Just someone put me onto this and just say, hey, like watch out for this, knowing Howie Roseman's history of being aggressive in the trade market, right? Yeah. Look, just monitor what happens in Denver with Patrick Surtain. You've seen the Broncos are basically getting rid of everybody. Right? I mean, they did bring back Tim Patrick on a revised deal, but they've gotten rid of a lot of people. Surtain is 3 years into a 4-year deal. So this is the time when you would normally give a guy a contract extension who's that good, right? So the Eagles liked Surtain, and remember, they were trading up.
Loved them.
They loved them. They had Surtain and Devontae Smith there. Denver took Surtain. They went up and got Devontae Smith, but he's a guy who could come in sort of like AJ Brown and just fix your problem in a finger snap. You obviously would have to trade a lot for him. I don't know, I'm not Howie Roseman. I don't know what he's willing to give up. But they certainly have 2 second-round picks. They got their first-round pick. They got a bunch of late day 3 stuff. So, just keep an eye on it, because if he were to become available, I would anticipate the Eagles wanting to be aggressive and trying to get him. I'm sure a lot of teams would be as well. So they'd have competition.
Of course. Yeah. They would. In fact, they talked to Denver at the trade deadline. I know they were on it, and they weren't moving. Denver wasn't moving them. So I agree with you. If they make him available, how could the Eagles not be? Howie doesn't miss on these things in terms of checking into it. I mean, he's really good at that. And he stayed on AJ Brown. I mean, they talked at the combine there, and the Titans told him then they weren't trading him. And they checked back, and then AJ wasn't getting what he wanted, and Howie didn't stop, and he got him. And what a trade, by the way. Obviously, it's an awesome trade. So, yeah. And then at safety, I know we've had questions, and it's sort of out there about McKinney and their interest in him. it's going to come down to cost. He is the guy at safety. I mean, if you really look at it, just to go over this very quickly here,
Yeah.
it's
Ever
of
since
the
Whitfield got tagged, he became the guy.
and Kyle Duggar got the rare transition tag.
Yeah.
So it's Xavier McKinney. Yes, the Eagles have interest in. Cam Curl, we've not heard the Eagles connected to. We've heard they had a passing interest in Darnell Savage, but he's not coming to Philly. He's got, barring something highly unforeseen. There's an AFC team involved. There's might be two AFC teams involved, as a matter of fact. But yeah, I don't see him coming to Philly. Gardner Johnson, yes, they have interest in him. As you speak here, Titans have a lot of interest in him. Denard Wilson obviously coached him. He knows how to coach him. I don't put percentage on anything, as you know, but a real possibility goes to Tennessee. Wouldn't rule out the Eagles there. What other names have you heard?
Julian Blackmon. Remember, he is a guy who played in Indianapolis. So Nick Sirianni has some experience with him. He's a free agent safety. He's a guy who's not going to break the bank. Remember, we're talking about two things here. We're talking about the Eagles most likely looking at two safeties, because the only guys under contract at the safety position for the Eagles right now are Reed Blankenship, Tristan McCullum, and maybe Mekhi Garner and Sidney Brown, who's coming back from the ACL. So they really don't have, outside of Reed Blankenship, right, somebody who they can line up and play safety with. And Reed Blankenship should be a number 3 safety. And as we've been telling people, this is not going to be an unaggressive free agency period for Howie. He's trying to rebuild this defense so that this team can contend for a Super Bowl. Is Julian Blackmon an amazing player? No, but as a number 2 safety, you sort of get maybe the what do you call it, the Rodney McLeod vibes at him, when they had Malcolm and they added Rodney, and all of a sudden that gave them their kind of secondary pair for the future.
Yeah, and Rodney was so good. I mean, yes, he had a lot of injuries late in his career, but that's Rodney. So Rodney at the Super Bowl, he still wants to play. It's what he was saying. So, the Blackmon comparatively would cost less percentage wise, just because Blackmon is coming off of, he's had a lot of injuries now. He had 4 picks last season, but he hasn't played a full season yet. He's missed a lot of time in his career, but he's a talented kid. He's got really good size, by the way, pretty good range. So we'll see. That makes sense. That should be a good bargain there. Geno Stone, we heard the Eagles have some interest in him. Well, what do you know? Anything you know on him?
Geno Stone, I've also
year.
heard that there was some interest. The one thing, just asking independently about Geno Stone, and that's the same thing we mentioned about the linebacker, Patrick Queen, is because he kind of came out of nowhere. I think he was an undrafted guy out of Iowa. It's hard to tell whether he was a product of a great scheme and personnel around him, or is he just an ascending player who slipped through the draft cracks and is going to come in and be a really, a pro or a real, what, didn't he lead the league in interceptions last year?
Well, he was a 7th rounder in 2020. He had 7 picks.
Yeah,
7.
I get the sense, Adam, that he's not Anthony Harris. Okay, so let's calm people down there. He didn't accidentally, the ball did, he's a good player. No one's debating that he's a good player. I think the question is what his price tag is going to be coming off a 7 interception season compared to what he really is as a player. I would think, again, when we're talking about the Eagles, they have interest. Do they bring him in and call that like their top free agent, signing, or are they bringing him in and then another safety that they think is better that can complement him as they work those 2 guys in along with Reed Blankenship?
Yeah, so Stone, we know they're interested in. We'll see where this goes. These mid-level guys that we've heard from teams, you're looking at $6 to $8 million a year. Now, here's a question: if they don't pursue McKinney, do they sign 2? Because they have to add 2 safeties. They don't really have a choice right now. At least 2 safeties. So, do they add 2 mid-level guys like Stone or Garner? Yeah. Okay. Or do they sign one and wait to the draft? That's the thing I can't answer. I don't know.
Great point. Really good point. Also has to do on how they feel, how soon they feel Sidney Brown will be able to get back on the field. One more name that I've heard that they just interest, checked into, doesn't mean anything much, but Jordan Fuller of the Rams, kid out of Ohio State. I think it was a 6th round pick. Good story of development has
Mhm.
played a lot of snaps for the Rams. So he's just I don't suspect that he's like signs right away or anything like that. He's 26 years
Good.
old. Yeah, he's a good player though. Good player. Comes out of a great price. I think he's a New
Long,
Jersey kid.
tall.
I think he's a
Is he?
North
Okay.
Jersey kid. Yeah, he went to Ohio State, started 17 games last year. I think he was injured in 2022, but he started 12 games as a
Yep.
rookie. So, I mean, he's already kind of beaten the odds being, he's got 46 starts under his belt as a 6th-round pick. Smart player. You probably wouldn't put him in the like this great caliber of athletes, but somebody who can come in and hold the position down for you because he's already done that for the Rams.
Yep. Just turned 26. Long, tall guy.
Mhm.
Has some range. These are these are your mid-level UFAs, man. It's have not heard Justin Simmons yet, but I know people are going to ask. We've not heard Justin Simmons. I mean, obviously, it would make sense on a 1-year deal. He just turned 31 later this year. Still good.
Mhm.
Not maybe not the player he once was, but he still could play. Again, it shouldn't cost you very much because he just got cut and he's in his 30s now. But there's
One more guy I
yeah,
got, but I got sort
yeah,
of people have asked about, and I did not
yeah,
hear of interest. Brandon Jones, the safety
yep.
from Miami, who played under Vic Fangio, obviously last year, 25 years old, went to Texas. Now he had a good year this past year. He had a better year though, even though he got hurt 2 years ago when their defensive coordinator was Brian Flores. So he's a free agent. I was told that he really liked playing in that Flores scheme, which is a much more, blitz and aggressive scheme
Mhm.
than the Vic Fangio
Yeah.
scheme. So, people have asked us, hey, he's got the Fangio connection. Does he really want to come here to Philly and play for Fangio again? So I don't know how he feels about Vic. I just know that he liked the Flores scheme while he was in Miami. So
He can hit.
we'll
Yeah,
see.
he didn't start a lot because he was coming off the ACL. He was ready for the season, but he actually wound up being a backup mostly.
Mhm.
He can hit, and he's a former 3rd rounder in 2020. The guy's a good football player. He's been a good story development. He tore his ACL in 22. Any other yeah, I mean, look, they have to add two by the start of September. They have to add two. It's just
Right.
how they want to mix it up.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not trying to slam the door saying the Eagles are not in. I just didn't hear of Eagles' interest. I'm just saying
Yeah,
I had
gotcha.
heard that his preference, the scheme he liked was Flores' scheme. Now that I don't, again, if the Eagles are the only team offering him, of course he would take that. But we'll see
Yeah.
what happens with him.
Okay. Okay.
All right, good stuff there.
No problem.
Are we ready to move on to offensive targets?
Yes. Oh yeah.
All
Oh
right,
yeah.
we'll do that in a second. Let's pause real quick and hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you happen to stop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You will get a great deal. All right, Adam, run through the free agents real quick that the Eagles have in-house because there's a decent number of names.
All right. Quarterback, Marcus Mariota. And we'll get to him in a second when we look at quarterbacks. DeAndre Swift, Boston Scott, Rashad Penny, and running back there. Receivers, Julio Jones, OZ, Lamade Zaccheaus, Quez Watkins, of course, Jack Stoll. He was told a couple weeks ago that they're not going to tender him, but they do have interest in him coming back. They definitely want him back, we're told. It's just find the right contract, and he should have a little bit of interest out there because he's a young wide tight end. There are just not a lot of them out there, in-line tight ends who can block. But the RFA tenor, $2.97 million, it's a lot to pay for a young wide tight end. That's just way over market. Sua Pettas, the one guard, UFA, Roderick Johnson, and of course, Jack Driscoll, who we'll talk about in a minute, but who could also play guard and tackle. So again, don't see very many, if at all, coming back. That's just the way it is. Again, a lot of these guys who are on 1-year deals and sort of make good contracts, and just back into the roster guys, unfortunately.
The one thing you have to not worry about, but with Stoll, because the Eagles really aren't deep behind Dallas Goedert. I mean, they have names, but
I
like you
know.
always say, that doesn't mean you're deep. Is
Yep.
there are two coaches out there who come from the Eagles who probably would like a versatile tight end, because Stoll can give you the blocking and the catching. So, Shane Steichen out there in Indianapolis, I don't know how good their depth is at tight end. And the same thing with Gannon in Arizona, who already took over a few Eagles last year, right? He took Kaiser White, he took Kevon Wallace. I think there was another player that went out there. Shashre. Didn't Andre Shashre wind up going out to Arizona for a little
Yeah, I
bit?
think you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
he did. I don't know. Is he still with them or is he a free agent? Sasha is still there. Yeah, he is. Yeah, good call.
Yeah, Shashre.
You never know. Yeah, and they are not strong at tight end. Arizona could use another fact. Jeff Swaim, their wide tight end, is up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see the Colts have a lot of tight ends. And Mo Alley Cox, who the Eagles were very high on when he was a basketball player in college.
Mm.
He's still with Indy. It is unbelievable. Mo Alley Cox.
Good player.
Wow.
That's a good story for them, the Colts.
Yeah.
But he's not much of a
Virginia
blocker,
College.
right? He catches the ball well, but
No, he's a blocker. No.
Oh,
He's a
does he?
wide.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They made him into a blocking tight end.
Okay.
He is all of a sudden turning 31 in September. Where is the time gone? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it'll just be interesting because that familiarity thing, comes into
Mhm.
play a lot of times.
Yep.
So all right. So the Eagles will need a backup quarterback. They're going to need running
Yep.
backs, at least two, right? They're going to need, and we'll see what happens with Jack Driscoll, as you mentioned. They're going to need some depth on the interior offensive line, and then of course they're going to need. God, they need so much depth at wide receiver because beyond
I know.
Devontae Smith and beyond AJ Brown, you got Britton Covey and what? Like you
Nothing.
got to fill holes there.
Nothing.
Yeah.
They don't have a 3-4-5. Yes, they like Austin Watkins. He got some guarantee money. That doesn't guarantee you anything. Joseph Ngata's there. That doesn't guarantee you anything. Shaquan Davis, they gave guaranteed money to. That doesn't guarantee you anything. Jacob Harris, they're very intrigued by. Can't wait to see what this guy could do. But again, he's not guaranteed anything in terms of making the roster or contributing. So
Right.
they need a 3, 4, and 5. Look, the cool thing is there are a ton of them out there. They signed Zacchaeus late. They signed Julio Jones late.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of number 3s out there, whether it's Noah Brown, Cedric Wilson, who have they have experienced this type of offense because they know that the OC. There are other guys they could wait on. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to jump in. It is a buyer's market at slot receiver or third receiver. It doesn't have to be the slot particularly.
Mm-hmm.
You just like to get a guy. And we know the scheme's going to change because Sirianni did a terrible job of getting OZ the ball. That was not OZ's fault. That's on Nick. And then obviously the Brian Johnson is no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
So that third receiver, whoever it is, and I don't see a lot of money being paid for this guy. They've got their pick. It could come down to a bunch of guys. It's just not, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So everybody loves the quarterback spot, all the juicy information there.
Okay.
What is your feel on the backup quarterback situation?
I'm kind of surprised by this. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but again, it's not making any predictions here with Marcus Mariota, but I've heard they've not shut the door on Mariota. So I'm not sure why. I know he's doing better as the season went along. We all know the training camp was not very good to him, but they haven't haven't shut the door on him. And but the target outside the team is, from what I understand, is Easton Stick. Easton Stick played for Kellen Moore, obviously did a nice job when he's pressing the service last season when Justin Herbert got hurt. He played for Kellen Moore, who's now the Eagles offensive coordinator. And by the way, he can run. He can move. He's a pretty athletic quarterback. So if I can remember talking to him on Sirius XM many years ago, in 2019, when he was coming out for the draft, and we were talking about his athletic ability, that would be a guy. That would be a target for them if they don't re-sign Mariota. Forget about Minshew, who's going to be making a lot of money elsewhere. They were on him last year, but Gardner was looking for a better situation in terms of maybe playing because they knew Eagles were going with Hurts.
He got exactly what he wanted.
Yeah, and good choice by him because Hurts was going to be the man after 22. He was great in 22. But Minshew is looking to sign for more money and have a chance to start. Though they have interest in Flacco, he's not coming here. Why? Because he's going to look to. I know he's got interest in Cleveland. Cleveland like him back. My understanding is there are a couple other teams in it for Flacco in terms of giving him a chance to potentially start. One of them definitely will, if he would sign with this unidentified team. So, other than that, Stick makes a ton of sense. Man, it is a dry number 2 quarterback list. Brissett is going to make too much money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at, I mean, I've not heard them aligned with Tyrod Taylor would make some sense because he can move. Everybody loves working with Tyrod, talking to coaches work with him,
Yeah,
but I've not heard them
Giants
connected with
should
him.
bring him back. I mean,
Yeah, they should. Yeah, I've not heard his name on the list, but he'd be a good fit for the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. I mean, I don't see Tyler Huntley would fit, but I've not heard him. I'm just looking at guys who would fit with their system so they wouldn't have to change it. That's it, man. And I don't know about you, but I've not heard of anyone else.
No, it's been a strange backup quarterback, and because we went through, there are a lot of decent names, but yeah, you backup quarterbacks get paid a lot, and I don't know that the Eagles want to get into that because remember we talked about Tanner McKee being on the team, and you'd like to maybe see what he can do here in year 2, so you don't maybe want to get too wrapped up in the guaranteed money on a veteran when you can get a veteran and put him on the practice squad these days, which some teams have done.
That is true. Yeah, you made that. That's a great point because that's the beauty of that having that practice squad. But again, they're looking for veteran as we understand it. Let's move to running back.
Yeah.
Forget about Rashad Penny. That would be the shocker of the year if he came back. They benched him. The coaches clearly didn't want to play him. They clearly didn't want to play him.
Yeah.
I mean, boy, I was so disappointed with it. I really wanted that one to work, man. I for fantasy, I thought it'd be great in that scheme and Stout's scheme, and he just they got down on him. It just didn't work, and there's really nothing else to say. Boston Scott has got interest elsewhere. I know the Eagles, they won't shut the door on him, but would not shock me if a team that he's had good success against would pursue him. Who knows?
Boston Scott. Good. I have to go research that.
Yeah,
that would make
but we'll
sense.
see. Now, DeAndre Swift.
Go ahead.
This depends where the money goes. It just on Swift. It depends where the money goes. See, it's such a buyer's market. You've got Tony Pollard who played for more. Pollard's got a pretty good market, I've heard. Not in terms of money. We generally don't know the money on running back right now because it varies depending on who you speak with. But Dallas wants him back. There are a couple AFC teams I talked to were certainly interested in him. We'll see if the Eagles get involved here, but the Eagles don't. They did pay B West many years ago, but typically they're not paying a lot of money. So, Barkley? I have my thoughts on him. What are your thoughts on Barkley here?
So, all right, the Eagles have liked Barkley. I mean, he's what's not to like? He was the number 4 overall pick or number 2 overall pick in the draft years ago. He's a great athlete. You and I and Greg Cosell, we've picked apart his game in the NFL. There are some interesting parts of the game that I don't think have translated as well from Penn State to the NFL. In fact, I had a conversation recently with someone who's coached him along the line. Made an interesting comment that Saquon. I was really looking to see if Saquon has a certain scheme that would benefit him, like maybe a Shanahan scheme where it's more outside zone and one cut scheme.
Yep.
And the guy told me, he basically said, listen, when Saquon wants to run the ball really hard, he's as good as any running back and can fit any scheme. But it stood out to me that he said when he wants to run the ball really hard like that. So, and that's one of the criticisms is sort of the running style, his contact balance, his vision. Obviously he struggled to stay healthy. But I think with the Eagles and running backs, Adam, it's always about whether or not they can get a bargain. Like Saquon Barkley wants a multi-year deal. So does Tony Pollard. So does any running back. And my just talking to people when we were out at the combine, like what is the running back market going to look like? I did not talk to a lot of people who think that there's going to be a great 2 or 3 year deal where there's guaranteed money in year 2 or year 3 for a lot of these running backs. But there's always
other than Josh Jacobs, maybe.
Jacobs and Barkley have the best shot to get some guaranteed money.
What Jacobs does, I'd be stunned if Barkley gets guaranteed
because of the injuries, right? But people said that to me too. But Adam, they said there might be a team that has, I know the Texans come up a lot of money to spend, and feel like
that would be one.
I can get this guy, and I don't mind if I'm releasing him after a year and taking $2 million guaranteed money hit in year 2. I'll give it to him now, and if I got to eat it, I eat it. It's only $2 million. You know what I'm saying? So, but back to the Eagles, I can only see this happening if Saquon's market isn't very good and it's a 1-year deal and it's really a 1-year prove it low base salary. Remember Alshon Jeffrey, what he signed for in 2016 with the Eagles. He had no
First year,
market.
yep.
They signed him
Small.
to a
He had a
1
proven
year
deal.
like base salary, 9 million. And I don't even know if they would give Saquon 9 million for you because he's a running back.
No,
No, I
yeah,
don't.
look,
Yeah.
let's call it like it is. He's coming off a disappointing year. He didn't play well. I mean, that's multiple people told me that graded his tape.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard there's interest, but man, as I always say, it depends on the cost. I like your point about, look, if he doesn't get what he wants, you got to try it. And to me, look, the Texans, because they shocked the world last season, they're going to want to keep going. Yeah, you could sign him to a 2-year deal and put a little bit of guaranteed money. If you're the agent, and say, look, he has new agent, he has new representation, CAA is representing him. But if you're the agent, I think his name is Ed Berry. If you want to get some guaranteed money in year 2 to make him think about not cutting him, but to put in like more than 2 or 3 million in the second year and fully guaranteed with his injury history, again, not coming off a down year. In fact, if you look at the running back group, other than DeAndre Swift, they're all faded. I mean, that wasn't Josh Jacobs' fault that Josh McDaniels got fired, who was the play caller. So he had a down year, but I know the Raiders definitely want him back. Pollard came up from a down year. The scheme changed. Henry faded. Eckler really faded. Although there's some thought, source with another team told me, he said, listen, watch Eckler for Philly. I'm like, yeah, but they have Kenny Gainwell. And I know Eckler is fantastic catching the ball, but he had a down year. Because I'm just telling you, system fit. And he just said, keep an eye on Eckler for Philly. I'm like, okay. No,
that makes sense, right? For a variety of reasons, both because of familiarity with the scheme. Obviously, Kellen Moore coached him last year. And then if you look at Austin Eckler and say this guy on the hierarchy of running backs right now, on the totem pole of free agent running backs, is probably 4th or 5th, right? You're putting Barkley ahead of him. You're putting Jacobs ahead of him, putting Pollard ahead of him, putting Derrick Henry ahead of him. Now you're getting into the 5th running back in a depressed market. So like if Jacobs and Barkley get a maximum of $9-10 million, and then maybe Derrick Henry gets himself 7 or 8 guaranteed, and then maybe Pollard gets himself 6 or 7. Now you're starting to talk about, oh, well, maybe I can get Austin Eckler, who's maybe not what he was, but still fits our scheme, catches the ball really well. Yeah. Now I can get him for 3 or 4, maybe, or build some incentives if I need to, like on a 1-year deal. Okay. I mean, I still think that's actually a lot for an Eagles running back, knowing that last year their highest paid running back was Boston Scott, right? But Austin Eckler. But this is like we've said, we expect Howie to be a little bit more aggressive than normal. And if you really think Austin Eckler is going to catch 40 balls for you and run the ball, a decent amount, like as part of a committee, if he's going to be that sort of guy that gives you a multi-dimensional element to your offense, then maybe you find that it's worth going this year $4 to $5 million for a running back, especially when you got nobody else under contract. Really,
they certainly still need an in between the tackles early 100%. Down back, and that to me is not Kenny Gainwell. I know he's an excellent pass protector. Now here's the other thing. Okay, before we move on, are they going to throw the backs? I looking at Kellen Moore's history, the backs get the football in the pass game, but we know Hurts. We've said this now for 4 years. He doesn't like checking it down like his predecessor Wentz. So he's got to check the ball down. I mean, they obviously have to design more for the backs to get the ball in the back out of the backfield. But just because this one guy from another team, and I don't know where the hell he got that information about Eckler, I'm just going to mention it to not dismiss Eckler coming to Philly.
By the way, Howie wants to win. He wants to build a Super Bowl contender. So if he signs Austin Eckler because he wants to throw the ball to running back more, and that's the idea of the offense, and it doesn't get done because Jalen Hurts really struggles and he just doesn't do it. Well, everybody's on the team the whole team's going to be remade if they stink next year anyway, and then we're going to be talking about Jalen Hurts' future and everybody else's. So the point is how he's going to get the best guys to fit the offense to give it the best chance to succeed. If it does not succeed because guys don't do their jobs, well, the whole thing, a lot of it's going to get blown up.
Let me ask you a question. Why wouldn't you just, if you could get Swift at like $4 million, why wouldn't you re-sign him? He was terrific running the football.
I would. If we're talking different. That you're just asking me what I would do. Yeah, because my totem pole theory that I just gave you, if Eckler is 5th, then Swift is either 6th or 7th, and now you're talking about even less money than whatever Eckler would get as the 5th or 6th best guy. So I would actually bring back DeAndre Swift. The only reason I might not is if Kellen Moore has watched the tape and says, listen, he catches the ball really well, but his pass protection is such an issue that it
Kenny
defeats the purpose.
or
I can
Eckler.
only put him down there to catch the ball on first and second
Yeah.
down. So, whereas Eckler might be better at it and
Okay.
therefore worth a little more
Fair
money.
enough. Fair enough. I'm just, boy, he was so good. He's much better as a runner than I anticipated. So,
But doesn't your point hold true that if you can get, what did they get last year out of combined yards out of Swift? It was like at least 1,200 yards, right?
it
Combined.
was in terms of catching and running.
Yeah, he gave 1,263 offensive yards last year, and on the fourth year of a rookie deal. So he made what, like $500,000, right?
No, he made more than that. No, he made DeAndre. Oh, he made way more than that.
What was his base salary?
It was last season 1.75 million.
Oh, okay. I thought on a second, he was a second round pick, wasn't he?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I thought the fourth year of the deal. Oh, that's right, because it's the fourth year. So okay, so my point is, if you can get 1,260 yards on a guy making $1.7 million, why are you going to pay Saquon Barkley $8 million to get about 1,260 yards? Because what's at Barkley's best, he can get you 1,800, but like that was once, right? I mean, he's really hasn't had years like that since his rookie year. And even last year, what did he have?
He had 1040.
He had less. He had 1,242 yards. Total.
I know. He did. He look. It was not a good year for Saquon, and Swift had a career year. 1049. He had, the thing that stunned me is he had 229 carries. I didn't see that coming.
Right.
And by the way, the game that he was held out, he could have played that last game, so he didn't miss a game due to injury. Give him credit.
Right.
So anyway,
Barkley has not had more than, he's had 1 year in the last 4 years where he's had more than 1,240 yards. Okay. He had 1,440 in 2019 combined. So you're telling me DeAndre Swift at 1.7, giving you 1,260, and then you're going to spend a bunch of $1 million on Barkley to give you at most 1,440, like 200 yards more, not even 200 yards more.
Right.
That economically doesn't make sense.
I agree. One more thing before we close this out. So there was a local report, Art Stapleton. What paper does he write for?
I believe Art is a friend of mine, so I should know. I'm pretty sure he's Bergen Record, but
Okay.
it might be a different.
He said he's unlikely to sign with Philly. So,
yeah, I did see him report that.
Yeah, good. So we, hopefully, that's correct.
Mhm.
No reason. He knows the Giants really well, and maybe he knows Saquon or someone close to him. So I'm just saying for accuracy, I hope it's correct. So we'll see what happens. But
and I'm guessing that's because and I don't want to get, I would think Barkley is going to have at least one suitor that's going to give him a lot more than the Eagles are willing to give.
I agree.
Guaranteed money in that second year. Maybe a little.
Here's the thing. It only takes one team. It could be your Texans, as you mentioned, who are such a great story.
Mhm.
It only takes one team to overpay for guys coming off a down year.
Mhm.
But look, when you're trying to win, and after all the crap that the Texans have been through, and they shocked the world last season, Vegas had them for 4 wins or 5 wins, depending which book you looked at.
Mhm.
But yeah, Barkley, look, and they've invested a lot in their line. Who knows? They got Dalton Schultz back, Nico Collins, who was awesome. Tank Dell came off the injury, but he was great. So they got to get it right at running back. But yeah, it's a pick of litter. So that you could get, there's so many different styles of runners here. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And that's about it on running backs. I haven't really heard much more on anybody else. We just said they need wide receiver help. Haven't really heard much on that. I mean, they're not going to pay a lot of money for a number 3 wide receiver because they're already paying a lot of money for a number 1 wide receiver, and they're very likely to give an extension to their number 2 wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So
and Goddard's got to get the ball. As long as he's here.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I mean, Goddard turns what? He just turned 29. The guy we know when healthy is terrific. They just got to get him the football more. I mean, that's the thing I'm really interested to hear, because the tight ends do getting the ball in the Kellen Moore offense. Really interested to see what could happen here. So that's it, man. There's just nothing. So there's going to be some surprises. We'll see. We were hoping that we'd be the only ones who knew about Sweat, but we certainly sure as hell were not. It's because we were going to drop that on you. There's really, and there might be 1 or 2 surprises here. There's a couple things that buzzed on us over the weekend, which we don't have confirms on. With Sweat, we sure as hell did. But we didn't, there are a couple things that came our way, and we're like, okay, that's interesting. I don't know if that's going to happen, but what we've learned, as you said, and we'll get out here in a minute, is that you never know with Howie. The AJ Brown one was awesome, how they kept it quiet and went right during the draft, by the way, the draft, and what a trade. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so to sum it all up, it feels like safety and edge rusher might probably be the areas where you see the most aggressive moves made by Howie. And then maybe something develops on the trade market between now and the draft. But should be a fun one. I know there's a lot of fun names out there, and like I said, we'll have everything to the best of our abilities updated on InsideTheBirds.com on the free agent tracker. So make sure you're checking that out all throughout the day. You got one more thing before we're out of here?
No, I was just going to say, and check us out on our live stream on Wednesday night. We'll see what happens, because someone could break during the live stream. You know that this. I remember I was on WIP in like 2010, and like 4 stories broke. I was just on a segment. It was just crazy, one after another. Like guys were signing or agreeing to deals. So yeah, and the first 2 days obviously going to be very hectic. Looking forward to it.
There you go. All right. That is going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you all, our great listeners, for flying with us inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation.